Hello, my name's Tristan Janelli. I'm a music undergraduate here at CSUMB, about to finish up my degree actually within the next week or so I'm very excited about that. I currently work as a music teacher in the private sector, so just one-on-one students with mostly an emphasis in songwriting and improvisation. So today we're going to hear from a couple of professors who work at CSUMB. We're going to talk about pedagogy and power structures and how all these things are related and what we might do to kind of re-examine some of the more difficult aspects of music theory and some of the things that may be a little hard to look at and talk about but are necessary.
So I am a composer for primarily film and television. Was my early career, and I still do a little bit of that. But now I've moved into the concert hall space. Currently I'm working on a piece for the Houston Chamber on Symphony down in Houston, Texas. I'm doing a clarinet concerto with the Monterey Symphony. I'm in residence with them. This is my 5th year with them, and I'm scheduled to be out till 2029 with that orchestra. I'm working on several projects. I just finished a documentary on the Condors, which is going to be on PBS, so I'm very excited about that score coming out. And teaching at Cal State University in the music department, and doing a lot of talks. I was at the Juilliard School last week with a premiere. And this summer I will be in Brazil with a piece I wrote called Alone Together. That piece will be performed in November, but I'm going in July to visit. The piece that I did at Juilliard is being toured all over Italy. Another piece called The Sorrows, written for guitar and string quartet.
So I'm assistant professor of music here at Cal State Monterey Bay. I work on a project here that's called the Heritage Musics of Monterey Bay Initiative, where we're developing a variety of programming, research, learning experiences that is really activating the wealth of musical knowledge in this region, and then community engagement projects by students and faculty doing oral histories with local musicians. So that kind of like connection between local practitioners and institutions of higher learning is something that has informed my interest from my early studies in introducing me to the field of ethnomusicology. And it's wonderful to get to practice that in such a musically rich region as Monterey County is.
So I'm an improviser. I always have been, from pretty much day one. I mean, there are pictures to prove this. So it was always really surprising when I eventually entered formal training that improvisation really wasn't a part of it, and honestly disheartening, because that's what attracted me to music in the first place. And this was true from elementary school up until high school and to some extent college, but they did give us opportunities to improvise. It just wasn't always within the theory courses, which makes sense with the way that theory is currently taught. But I think there are some ways that we can improve upon that. But now we're going to hear a bit about the background of our professors.
So I was 5 or 6 years old, realized I had perfect pitch and synesthesia, which is associating colors with modalities, like Olivia Messiaen. And so I had a song called The Rainbow Song that I wrote when I was about 5 years old, started playing it on piano. And then my sister, who took piano lessons, I used to play the Moonlight Sonata, so I picked that up by ear and started playing that. My mom said, let's get you lessons, and I ended up going through several instruments and landed on the viola in the orchestra world, and that changed my life.
I have lived on the East Coast most of my life, a recent transplant to California, and I grew up in a town that has some similarities to Pacific Grove here in Monterey, in that it was started as a Methodist camp meeting, a vacation retreat, and so this like little enclave with a lot of community music activity. So we would have like every spring, actually about this time of year, a recital of different children playing instruments, and there were a lot of artists in that community. I had a neighbor who was a professional screen printer, and musicians, people who played like Zydeco and back porch bands, and so it was like a very artistically rich area that then also like was quite a juxtaposition to surrounding communities where there was a lot less resourcing for arts education, and yet a very musically rich community as well. So, finding the field of ethnomusicology as an area of emphasis was kind of eye-opening, that I knew that I was interested in people and society, and also in music and creative and expressive forms, and to discover that there's this field that looks at all of those as a cohesive collective was just wonderful. And so I went from undergrad directly into graduate school against advice of many people. So I had a sort of like straight shot path. I've been in the academic world my entire life. And so from undergrad, then I went to Brown University, combined in ethnomusicology and musicology, and doing some emphasis in Latin American studies there as well. And let's see, so from those like sort of more elite private institutions, then coming here to CSUMB was like eye-opening in terms of like the wide array of resourcing for music studies that exists in universities.
In undergrad, I was actually a business major, a double major in business and music. Back then, I didn't have music business degrees, which was kind of nuts, because back then I was so frustrated that they didn't. I tried to mix the two, but it didn't work. And so I just decided to just finish in music and composition, and a minor in viola performance with Margaret Ward. She was with and Osman Kivrak. Osman Kivrak is a Turkish violist with the Baltimore String Quartet, and then Margaret Ward, she played in the National Symphony and mostly in the Washington Opera. So I took viola with those folks. And then a composition with Haig Martirosyan, who's an Armenian composer and organist, and did that. And then I left there, did everything you do in DC. Thought I was going out to California, but ended up at NYU in the consortium there. My composition teachers were at the Juilliard School, and with Justin Della Gioia and Corigliano at Lehman College. So that was the great thing about moving to New York. I could take composition with several different composers in different universities there. Great composition teachers that taught me a lot of theory in terms of Persichetti. Vincent Persichetti was a book that we used a lot of. Of course, Samuel Adler, who taught at the Juilliard School, we used his book for orchestration and advanced orchestration. And then also the Shakirian method. The Shakirian analysis is something that we did very much in grad school, analyzing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. It was a fascinating approach, kind of like if you're analyzing the Beethoven Symphony, which my professor did. You could take Beethoven and basically it was like a Cliff Note version of Beethoven's entire symphony, and you could see how all the movements all the movements related to one another, and how it was this big curve of a 1 chord to 5 back to 1.
So Schenkerian analysis was invented by this guy named Heinrich Schenker, who was trying to find the genius in music. He unfortunately was also a nationalist and a racist. He had very hierarchical ways of thinking about things, which have kind of bled into the way that we talk about music today. Even language like the dominant and the tonic and the subdominant, all of these things kind of imply this hierarchical nature to music itself, almost as if it's essential to existence, which I just disagree with.
some fundamental level, it's kind of a question of what music is. And so I think that a lot of the theory world is operating off of the idea that music is the concept that is most clearly distilled in the notation, and then like sort of the actual interpretation or performance of the music is the sort of like after the fact consequences of the original idea. And I think that there are other places in the world where it's the doing of all the things that is the music. It's like you can't have the music without people dancing together. Music doesn't make sense unless there's the ritual component to it, or the people who are providing food and hospitality around the musical event. And so, like, yeah, of course, the music exists for like enacting the movement of the dance. So why would you ever think about the two separate from each other?
In the terms of the theory, I think things are beginning to change. I use Kafka and Pain, which is a book that we used when I was at Juilliard and American University. And there's some kind of archaic ideas in those books when I'm in class and I'm explaining things to students that could be tweaked. So I know there's new publications that are coming out. There's the Binward theory book that kind of has a more broader sense, draws more into jazz. Jazz is kind of the new classical these days, and so there is an object, people are being a little bit more objective and viewing music and open to new ideas, including the world of ethnomusicology, which is the study of, everything non-Western music. And so what they're finding in there are seeping their way into academia and making it a more broader study.
So there's this classic music sociologist, John Blacking, who posited the definition of music as humanly organized sound. Now that definition has been, and I think that resonates for me a lot in the sense that it's, opening up access that anybody can be the decider of a set of sounds as musical, and that really is pushing against these ideas of musical genius and expertise that I think really gatekeep and limit a lot of people who otherwise could have very fulfilling musical lives in our society. So I like that definition as a foundation, and then it's been further challenged by some anthropologists, sound study scholars, to say, well, who are we to put humans at the center of everything? And maybe there are other forms of existence that are organizing sound in just as meaningful ways.
I think the way that music is currently looked at in the West, it leaves a lot of people behind who are here and want something outside of that, which, maybe we just kind of have to do that in order to have a comprehensive curriculum in anything. You have to choose one thing to focus on, right? But I also think there's something to be said about re-examining the way that we think about hierarchy in music, in the way that we think about these standard chordal and melodic approaches to composition and performance, when there are so many other ways of being involved in music and existing in a musical way, so to speak.
The old days used to use hymns, hymnals, that you had to be able to read music and read charts and things of that sort. And nowadays, there's kind of like these number systems that happen. And you typically use those in the Nashville studio session world as well, when you need to chart a song real quick. But I think the institution of learning how to read music is still, something that should be learned. I don't think you can learn the orchestrations of, Stravinsky or Ravel or Satie, or to be able to understand those guys and how their mind works without being able to read music. So I'm still a big proponent in that theory of life.
Kaswa is the name for the carnival song gatherings where people were so welcoming and ready to teach me lyrics and teach me some basic footsteps so that I could participate in this as like song and dance through the streets of the community. And didn't matter level of experience, but then like this additional level of richness that happens as I kept going back and singing with the same groups, and then you learn to like sort of ways to joke and tease with each other through the songs, and all these different aspects of improvisation.
The focus today is less on writing stuff on a page and more on getting it into a digital audio workstation. I think it makes less sense to only look at notation as our primary source for things. Now, I still think notation is a great tool, and I would never want to get rid of it because of its usefulness in explaining musical ideas from one musician to another. But there are all these things that are normally considered extra musical that I think are really important to understanding what music is and what it does, that should be just a part of theory as a whole and how we look at music in general.
We're in some interesting times with music, with AI. That's a big component that's kind of affecting things, especially music and television. It's kind of taken over in that well. But the thing is that I've always been a person to grasp technology, because if you're not using it, you're losing it. So you're behind. It's kind of like the digital O's and ones when music became digital. There are people like, oh no, I'm not getting rid of my vinyl. Well, and then Spotify came along, and it's kind of the things where you have to accept the technology and live with it and learn to grow with it. And you either change with it or get left behind. And so television music, I remember when it went from recording studios to a laptop, like we're recording this session now, with Neve consoles put into a laptop, basically. So the world's changing. It's changing fast, and you have to change with it. So I encourage anybody out there, if you're going to get into music, be ready, put your seatbelt on.
Classic ethnomusicologist Tom Torino has this framework of different ways of being musical, and two primary among the four total categories are participatory-based or performance-based music. So, for example, the carnival music that I studied for my dissertation research in the broader Cusco region of Peru really has space for people of all abilities to participate. And so whether you're like clapping along or whistling a response, or being one of the lead instrument players, it's a space that I think widens access to people being involved in music. And I think that aligns with what I think music is for and does best in society as a whole.
We just need more eyes. We need more ears. We need more outside of the box approaches, really. And I'm a little wary of solutionism, because these frameworks that we interact with are deeply entrenched within all of us, and so it can be very easy to be continually playing into these frameworks without necessarily even realizing that's what we're doing. The more we kind of critically examine this stuff, the better the outcomes are going to be. So thanks for listening to me ramble. Thanks for listening to these very intelligent, articulate professors that I had the privilege of speaking to for this. And hope you enjoyed. Thanks.